Wait, what? Wait, what? What?
I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that you have reached the absolute pinnacle of the music industry. You have achieved what, millions of people dream of.
Right, the ultimate fantasy.
Yeah, you've sold millions of records, you've got #1 hits, just dominating the charts. You are showered with awards, you have bottomless wealth, and your fame is known across the globe. You're sitting at the very top of the mountain.
I mean, it is the dream of almost anyone who has ever picked up a microphone or a guitar. The arrival at the final destination.
Yeah, the point where you never have to worry about money or relevance ever again.
Right.
And now, I want you to imagine looking at all of that, the money, the adoration, the cultural power, and deciding to deliberately delete every single album you've made.
Oh, man.
Refusing to sell your own music to the people who desperately want to buy it. Walking away from the industry forever. And then taking £1 million in cash, traveling to a remote Scottish island, and setting that mountain of money on fire.
I mean, it sounds like a surreal movie script. It sounds like something a screenwriter would invent to make, I don't know, a heavy-handed point about the corrupting nature of fame.
It sounds completely fabricated. But here's the thing. This is 100% true. This actually happened.
It really did.
We are looking at a massive stack of sources today. Music industry histories, archival interviews, contemporary news reports to understand the story of the KLF. They were the band that achieved monumental, world-dominating success and then meticulously and deliberately destroyed it all. Our mission today on Wait, is taking a deep dive into these sources to figure out not just the crazy things they did, but the actual physical mechanics of how and why someone dismantles their own empire.
Yeah, to understand how we get to a £1,000,000 bonfire on a remote island, we really have to look at the origin of this chaos.
Right. Where does this even start?
Well, the architects of this story, Bill Drummond and Jimmy Cauty, they were never your conventional musicians. They weren't guys who spent their teenage years dreaming of writing heartfelt ballads to play in stadiums.
No, they were something entirely different. They were conceptual artists.
Yeah, their primary medium wasn't just sound or melody. Their medium was experimentation, chaos, and frankly, pranks.
Pranks.
Yeah, they were deeply fascinated by mythology and the way cultural narratives are built. They looked at the music industry not as a ladder to climb, but as a system to be poked, prodded, and, manipulated.
My mind immediately goes to a comparison here. It feels like a couple of underground, anti-establishment hackers writing some weird code as a joke and then waking up to find they have accidentally become the joint CEOs of a Fortune 500 company.
That is a great way to put it, actually.
But how do underground conceptual pranksters accidentally dominate the global pop charts? I mean, you don't just trip and fall into a #1 hit.
You really don't. It begins with a very specific, strange question they asked themselves. When they formed the KLF, the driving inquiry wasn't about getting rich.
Okay, what was it?
The question was, could success itself become a piece of conceptual artwork? They viewed the mechanisms of pop stardom as a laboratory. They wanted to see if they could reverse engineer a #1 hit, almost as an artistic experiment to prove a point about how manufactured and predictable the music industry could be.
Okay, but how did they physically do that? What was the mechanism for hacking the pop charts back then?
Well, they treated pop music like a mathematical formula. They relied heavily on sampling, which was still a relatively new and kind of a Wild West concept at the time.
Right, the rules weren't really written yet.
Exactly. So they would take recognizable hooks from other artists, stitch them together with heavy, driving dance beats, and layer on these absurd, repetitive lyrics. They didn't rely on organic songwriting. They constructed earworms out of pre-existing cultural materials. They literally even wrote a book about it called The Manual, which gave step-by-step instructions on how to manufacture a #1 single without having any musical talent.
So the fame, the chart positions, the record sales, that wasn't the reward for them. That was just the canvas they were painting on.
Yeah, and the wild part is the experiment worked almost too well.
Right.
By applying this cynical mechanical formula, they just churned out hit after hit. We are talking about an astronomical level of cultural penetration. By 1991, they had actually become the world's biggest-selling singles act.
Which brings us to the central paradox of the KLF. Because most people who achieve that level of success, they become terrified of losing it.
Oh, yeah.
They hire massive PR teams, they repeat the same musical formulas, they try to preserve their status and protect their wealth at all costs.
But for Drummond and Cauty, the more wildly successful they became, the less interested they seemed in maintaining that success.
Because success was never the end goal.
Right, it morphed into their new artistic raw material. If your initial artwork was, can we become the biggest band in the world? Well, once you achieve that, the artwork is finished, the canvas is full. So what do you do with all this cultural capital you've amassed?
I just want to pause and let that question hang in the air for you listening.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do when you have achieved everything society tells you to strive for? But that achievement was only ever an experiment.
That's a heavy thought.
How do you top becoming the biggest act in the world when you don't even really care about being a pop star?
You don't try to top it, you dismantle it.
Yeah.
And they chose to rupture their relationship with the music industry in a way that remains one of the most unforgettable moments in pop culture history.
The 1992 BRIT Awards.
Yes.
For context, if you aren't familiar, this is the biggest night in the UK music calendar. It is a highly polished, corporate, televised event where the industry celebrates itself.
Lots of back padding.
Right. Executives are in evening, we're sipping champagne. Everything is choreographed to be safe, highly produced, and above all, profitable.
And into this highly sanitized environment steps the KLF. They were invited to perform because they were the biggest selling singles act of the year.
Makes sense.
The expectation was that they would get up and perform their latest upbeat dance track, maybe with some backup dancers.
They didn't do that.
Far from it. They collaborated with Extreme Noise Terror, which is a grindcore extreme metal band.
Oh, man. The sonic clash alone would have been enough to shock that room. Imagine the polite, polished pop royalty suddenly being assaulted by extreme heavy metal, grinding guitars, and screaming vocals at a corporate awards dinner.
It completely destroyed the pop sheen of the event.
But the music was only the beginning of the statement.
Yeah, during the performance, Drummond actually fired blank machine gun rounds directly over the heads of the audience.
Just picture the visceral panic in that room. The sheer terror and confusion of the executives and the celebrities, dressed in their tuxedos and gowns, diving for cover because they don't know the rounds are blanks.
It was pure chaos, and the moment the chaotic performance ended, it was immediately followed by a voiceover announcement, broadcast right there to the awards audience and the televised viewers, stating that the KLF had left the music business.
Now, if you are a consumer of modern media, or if you work in PR, your immediate assumption, and the assumption of the entire public at the time, is that this is a stunt.
Of course.
It's an edgy, theatrical publicity gimmick. You cause a massive scandal on television, everyone writes about you in the newspapers the next morning, and your record sales go through the roof. It is a very natural assumption because our culture is built on the idea that all attention is good attention if you have a product to sell.
But we have to firmly correct that assumption. This was not a stunt.
No.
They never claimed it was a stunt. They weren't winking at the camera. They meant it entirely. They meant it so completely that they moved to the next phase, which is the part of the story that requires some real explanation.
The erasure.
The erasure. They didn't just announce a breakup and then sit back to collect the royalty checks for the rest of their lives. They systematically deleted their entire commercial catalog.
I really struggle with this concept. How do you even do that? Records are already out there in the world. They were on store shelves. How does a band actually physically erase themselves?
Well, the mechanism comes down to how they structured their business. Unlike most artists who sign away their rights to a massive corporation, the KLF operated through their own independent label.
Oh, yeah.
They owned their master recordings, they owned their publishing. Because they held the legal keys, they had the actual authority to instruct their distributors to immediately halt all new pressings of their records.
So they just cut the supply.
Yeah, they pulled existing stock where they could. They legally blocked their songs from being licensed for movies, commercials, or future compilations.
They took the legal and physical mechanisms that allow a band to exist in the commercial sphere, and they simply turned them off. We are talking about millions of dollars in future revenue, just abandoned. Can destroying your own art actually become a new work of art?
That is the philosophical core of what they were doing. When a painter creates a physical masterpiece, they can choose to throw it in the fireplace. But when a musician releases a pop song, it enters the public consciousness. It becomes attached to people's memories, their weddings, their summers. So when an artist decides to retract that music, it raises profound questions about ownership. Does an artist even have the right to erase their legacy once it belongs to the public?
And it's crucial we clarify a persistent piece of lore here. A lot of people hear, oh, they deleted their catalog,
Yeah.
and think that means they released it to the public domain. Like they walked away from the industry, so now the music belongs to the people. It's free to use.
That is a major myth. Deleting their catalog did not mean their music became free to use or open source.
Right.
They fiercely retained the copyright. They simply refused to exploit it. They locked it away specifically so no one else could use it either. It meant the KLF chose disappearance over immortality. Disappearance itself was the artwork.
Which is incredibly potent. The music effectively vanished from normal circulation. If you wanted a KLF record after that, you had to find a used copy at a garage sale or a record store. You couldn't just go buy a new one. They created a sudden, massive void where the biggest band in the world used to be.
But even creating that void wasn't the final act.
No.
You've dismantled the music, you've stopped the future income, but what about the money you've already made from the initial success of the experiment?
This is where we reach the climax of the story and the ultimate escalation of their artistic experiment, the event that people still argue about decades later. Bill Drummond and Jimmy Cauty withdrew £1 million in cash.
It's important to visualize the physical reality of that.
Yeah.
£1 million in paper currency is heavy. It is a substantial physical object. It's not a number on a banking app. It is literal bundles and stacks of physical wealth.
They took this massive pile of cash and they traveled to the remote Scottish island of Jura, and they set the money on fire. They burned £1 million.
You hear a story like this, and immediately the brain tries to find a loophole.
Of course.
The human brain, especially in our society, cannot process the intentional destruction of that much wealth. People immediately assume it must have been fake money or a trick of the camera.
But we have to separate fact from fiction here. The act was filmed, it was documented by a collaborator, and there is a lingering myth that the burning was faked or staged for the cameras, perhaps using prop money.
Right.
That myth has been thoroughly investigated by journalists and the authorities. It was entirely real. They burned actual legal tender, amounting to £1 million.
And burning that much physical paper is not a quick process.
I can't even imagine.
It takes hours. It's laborious. You have to keep stoking the fire, feeding the bundles in so they don't just smother the flames. It requires sustained, intentional effort over a long period of time to destroy that much currency.
Let's bat this around, because this is where the story stops being just about the music industry and starts being about fundamental human values.
Yeah.
Is burning money ever justifiable? I read this, and part of me feels a profound sense of offense.
It's a very common reaction.
Right. There are people struggling to pay rent, people starving. Why not give that £1 million to charity? Why destroy it?
It provokes a very specific, very visceral kind of anger in people. If they'd given it to charity, it would have been a neat, tidy narrative of redemption. We understand philanthropy.
You sure?
We also understand greed. If they had bought a £1 million yacht and crashed it into some rocks, people might have called them foolish, but they wouldn't be enraged. If they had spent £1 million on a lavish party, it would be seen as standard rock star excess.
But the deliberate, methodical burning of the cash itself feels like a direct attack on the agreed-upon rules of society. Money is a shared illusion. We all agree to believe that this specific type of paper has value, so the world functions. By burning it, they are essentially burning the illusion. They are showing you the matrix. And people hate being reminded that the things they dedicate their entire lives to stressing over are just conceptual agreements.
Which leads to the endless philosophical debate surrounding this act. Was this the greatest conceptual artwork in history? A bold statement about the arbitrary nature of wealth and the corrupting influence of the music industry?
Or was it simply madness?
Right. An act of colossal self-sabotage by two guys who got completely lost in their own mythology. Or maybe it was a form of protest against a capitalist system that places more value on a stack of paper than on human life.
What's telling is that even the people who witnessed it, and perhaps even Drummond and Cauty themselves at times in the years since, seemed to struggle to articulate the exact meaning of the fire. The act was so huge, so final, that it almost defies a simple explanation. It refuses to be put in a neat little box.
Yeah, as we look back at the arc of this entirely true, completely unbelievable story, we have to draw a line between what we know and what we don't.
The established facts are undeniable. They are etched into history. Bill Drummond and Jimmy Cauty formed the KLF. They genuinely cracked the code and became one of the world's biggest-selling singles acts.
They genuinely shocked the establishment, fired blanks at the BRIT Awards, and systematically utilized their legal rights to delete their commercial catalog.
And they undeniably went to the island of Jura and spent hours physically burning 1 million pounds in cash.
Those are the physical actions. The what and the how of the story are rock solid. But the motivations, the why, that remains deeply, profoundly disputed.
Yeah.
There is no single accepted explanation for why they did it. Some argue it was pure satire that got out of hand. Some say it was a rigorous performance art piece about the life cycle of a pop group. Others view it as a highly personal psychological experiment.
The mystery isn't what they did. The mystery is why they did it.
And maybe the fact that we can't easily answer the why is exactly the point.
It leaves us with something fascinating to consider about the era we live in now. Think about the modern digital footprint. Could an artist, a creator, or an influencer ever successfully delete themselves today?
It seems virtually impossible. In the streaming era, true erasure doesn't exist. If an artist tries to pull their catalog today, millions of people already have local files downloaded.
Right, the songs immediately get re-uploaded by fans to YouTube or TikTok.
Exactly. The attempt to disappear just spawns countless video essays and internet lore. The digital footprint is permanent.
The KLF existed in perhaps the last moment of human history, where physical destruction meant actual, tangible disappearance. Today, you can't burn the server farm. You can't recall the data. The art of truly disappearing might be completely lost to us now. They flipped human nature on its head, using their immense power to orchestrate their own void, and they did it right before the window to do so closed forever. Every remarkable story reminds us of one simple truth. Reality is often far stranger than fiction. Thank you for listening to Wait, What? Until next time, stay curious.